The afternoon sun cut through the broken blinds of my studio apartment in sharp, accusing lines. I sat on the edge of my mattress, no bed frame, couldn't afford one, and stared at the eviction notice taped to my door. 72 hours. That's all I had left before my landlord made good on his threat. My phone buzzed. Another text from the temp agency. Sorry, position filled. We'll keep you in our system. Translation: don't hold your breath. I pressed my palms against my eyes, fighting back the tears that had become too familiar over the past 6 months. Crying didn't pay rent. Crying didn't put food in my stomach. Crying didn't change the fact that I was 28 years old, college educated, and drowning. My name is Amara Bennett. 3 years ago, I had a career I loved, teaching English at an international school in Dubai. I had an apartment overlooking the marina, friends from 6 different countries, a life that felt purposeful and full. Then my father got sick. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I flew home to Chicago to take care of him, thinking I'd return to Dubai once he recovered. He died 4 months later. By then, my teaching contract had been terminated. My apartment in Dubai, gone. My savings, depleted by medical bills that insurance refused to cover. I'd moved into this studio in Pilsen, cheap rent in a neighborhood where gunshots were white noise, and started applying for teaching positions. But the market was saturated. Schools wanted candidates with Illinois certification, which I didn't have. The international schools required experience I couldn't get without being overseas. I was trapped in an impossible cycle, watching my bank account drain while my father's medical debt collectors called 3 times a day. So I took whatever work I could find: waitressing, retail, house cleaning, temp administrative positions that lasted 2 weeks before the budget cuts came. None of it was enough. The eviction notice stared at me like a death sentence. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. I needed a miracle, or at least a job that paid more than minimum wage. My laptop, 5 years old, held together with electrical tape, sat open on the floor. I'd been scrolling through job listings for hours, applying to anything that didn't require experience I didn't have. Most were scams. A few were legitimate but paid poverty wages. Then I saw it. Private nanny position. Immediate placement. Room and board included plus salary. Preferably bilingual. Discretion required. Serious inquiries only. The salary listed made me blink twice. It had to be a typo. Nobody paid that much for childcare unless the family was extremely wealthy, or extremely dangerous, or both. I should have been more careful, should have researched before applying, but desperation makes you reckless, and I had 72 hours before I'd be sleeping in my car, if they didn't repo that too. I clicked before I could talk myself out of it, filling out the application with hands that shook from too much coffee and not enough food. Education. Bachelor's in education, minor in Arabic studies. Experience: 3 years teaching elementary students in Dubai. Languages: English, Arabic, fluent, basic Spanish. References available upon request. I hit submit and immediately felt stupid. Why would anyone hire me? I had no nanny experience. My references were all overseas. I probably looked desperate because I was desperate. My phone rang 30 minutes later. Unknown number. Miss Bennett? A woman's voice, professional and clipped. This is regarding your application for the nanny position. Are you available for an in-person interview today? Today. As in, this afternoon. Yes, I said, trying not to sound shocked. Absolutely. Excellent. The address is 2847 North Lakeshore Drive, penthouse level. Can you be here by 4 o'clock? Lakeshore Drive, the Gold Coast, where Chicago's wealthiest families lived in buildings that cost more per month than I'd make in a year. I'll be there. Miss Bennett, one more thing. This position requires absolute discretion. The family values their privacy extremely seriously. Do you understand what I'm saying? The emphasis on extremely seriously sent a chill down my spine. But I was 3 days from homelessness. Of course. Good. Bring identification and references. Security will need to clear you before you come up. Don't be late. She hung up before I could ask questions. Who was the family? How old was the child? Why did they need someone immediately? And why did security need to clear me? But I didn't have the luxury of being picky. I had 72 hours before homelessness became my reality. I showered in water that ran cold after 3 minutes, pulled on the only professional outfit I owned, a black pencil skirt and cream blouse that I'd bought for my father's funeral, and tried to do something with my natural hair that hadn't seen a salon in 8 months. The result was presentable, if not polished. It would have to do. The train ride to the Gold Coast took 40 minutes. I spent it reviewing basic Arabic phrases, practicing my interview answers, trying to ignore the anxiety clawing up my throat. The building at 2847 North Lake Shore Drive was exactly what I expected. Glass and steel rising into the sky, doorman in a suit nicer than anything I'd ever owned, lobby with marble floors and crystal chandeliers. I felt immediately out of place. Amara Bennett, I told the doorman. I have an appointment at the penthouse. He didn't smile, didn't nod pleasantly like doormen in movies. Instead, he picked up a phone, spoke quietly, then gestured to a security guard I hadn't noticed standing near the elevator bank. ID, please, the guard said. Not asked, commanded. I handed over my driver's license. He scanned it with a device that looked military grade, checked something on a tablet, then nodded to someone I couldn't see. Arms out. Excuse me? Arms out. I need to check you for weapons. My stomach dropped. This is for a nanny position. Arms out or you don't go up. I complied, face burning as he wanded me like I was entering a federal building. When he finished, he handed back my ID and gestured to the elevator. 42nd floor. Ms. Castellano is expecting you. The elevator was glass-walled, offering views of Lake Michigan that would have been breathtaking if my hands weren't shaking. What kind of family had airport-level security for a nanny interview? When the doors opened directly into a penthouse apartment, I had to remind myself to breathe. The space was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the lake. Modern furniture in neutral tones. Abstract art that probably cost more than my father's medical bills. But what caught my attention were the details that didn't belong in a normal wealthy home. Security cameras in every corner, discreet panic buttons on the walls, reinforced doors with biometric locks, and standing near the windows, 2 men in dark suits with the kind of posture that screamed military or private security, earpieces visible, hands clasped in that universal stance of hired muscle. This wasn't just a wealthy family. This was something else entirely. A woman in her 50s appeared from a hallway. Perfectly styled silver hair, expensive black suit, the kind of posture that came from decades of commanding rooms. Miss Bennett, I'm Elena Castellano, the estate manager. She didn't offer her hand. Her eyes assessed me with the efficiency of someone used to evaluating threats. Follow me, please. I followed her through the apartment, trying not to stare at the 2 guards who tracked my movement without being obvious about it. She led me to a sitting room with leather furniture and a view that made my studio apartment feel like a closet. Mr. Marchese will be with you shortly. He's finishing a call. She gestured to a chair. While we wait, I need to ask you some questions. I sat back straight, trying to project competence I didn't entirely feel. Your application states you speak Arabic fluently. Where did you acquire this skill? I minored in Arabic studies in college, then spent 3 years teaching at an international school in Dubai. I used Arabic daily, with colleagues, students, in the community. I'm conversational and literate. Elena's expression didn't change. And you left Dubai, why? The familiar ache settled in my chest. My father was diagnosed with cancer. I came home to care for him. He passed away 6 months ago. I'm sorry for your loss. It sounded genuine, which surprised me. Why haven't you returned to teaching? Here was the part where most interviewers lost interest. I'm working on Illinois certification, but the process takes time and money. I've been doing temporary work while I figure out next steps. You're overqualified to be a nanny. I'm qualified to work with children, which is what this position requires. I met her eyes directly. And respectfully, Ms. Castellano, I need this job. I'll work harder than anyone you could hire because I understand what's at stake. Something flickered in her expression. Approval, maybe. Or calculation. Miss Bennett, before we continue, I need to be very clear about something. She leaned forward slightly. The Marchese family operates businesses throughout Chicago. Some of these businesses are traditional. Others are less conventional. Mr. Marchese has enemies. Serious enemies. People who would use his son to hurt him if given the opportunity. Do you understand what I'm telling you? My mouth went dry. You're saying I'm saying that if you take this position, you will be responsible for protecting a 5-year-old child whose last name makes him a target. You will live in a home with armed security. You will follow protocols designed to keep that child safe from people who wouldn't hesitate to use him as leverage. Her eyes bored into mine. This isn't a normal nanny position, Miss Bennett. This is accepting responsibility for a child whose father has made enemies powerful enough to kill. Can you handle that? I should have stood up. Should have walked out. Should have recognized that whatever money they were offering wasn't worth getting involved with organized crime. But I thought about my eviction notice, about sleeping in my car, about the medical debt that would follow me forever, about having nothing and no one and nowhere to go. Yes, I heard myself say. I can handle it. Elena studied me for a long moment, then nodded. We'll see. Before she could say more, I heard it. A child screaming. Not the tantrum kind of screaming. The terrified, inconsolable kind that makes every teacher's instinct kick into overdrive. The sound came from deeper in the apartment, high-pitched and desperate, cutting through the expensive silence like a knife. Elena's jaw tightened. Excuse me. She stood quickly, moving toward the sound with practiced urgency. I should have stayed seated. Should have remembered I was a job applicant, not an employee. But 3 years of teaching had wired certain responses into my nervous system. A child in distress overrode everything else. I followed Elena down the hallway, past more security cameras, past a guard who stepped aside when Elena waved him off. The screaming grew louder. We reached a bedroom decorated for a young child, toys organized on shelves, books in multiple languages, a bed shaped like a race car. In the center of the chaos stood a little boy, maybe 5 years old, with dark curls and tear-streaked cheeks. He was hyperventilating, fists clenched, utterly unreachable. A man crouched in front of him, trying to make eye contact. Luca, you need to breathe. Can you hear me? Breathe with me. But the boy, Luca, just screamed louder, backing into the corner like a trapped animal. The man looked up, and I forgot how to breathe. He was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s. Dark hair cut short. Sharp features that would have been handsome if they weren't currently etched with frustration and barely controlled fury. He wore a white dress shirt with sleeves rolled up, exposing forearms marked with ink I couldn't fully see, an expensive watch catching the light. Everything about him screamed power and danger wrapped in expensive clothing. But what stopped me was his eyes. Dark brown, almost black, burning with an intensity that made my pulse stutter. These were eyes that had seen violence, had ordered it, had lived it. I'd seen photos in the news. brief mentions on crime reports I'd half listened to while cleaning houses. The Marchesi family, one of Chicago's old Italian crime families, smaller than the outfit but no less dangerous. They controlled the South Side's construction contracts, several legitimate businesses downtown, and according to rumors, a significant portion of the city's underground gambling operations. And this man, Dante Marchesi, was the head of it all. Had been since his father died 3 years ago in what the police called a suspicious accident, and everyone else knew was an assassination. I was standing in the home of a Mafia boss, watching him try to calm his terrified son. Elena, I told you to find someone who could handle him. His voice was controlled, but I heard the edge underneath, the barely leashed violence of a man used to solving problems with force. This is the third time this week. Mr. Marchesi, this is Miss Bennett. She's here for the interview. Those dark eyes found me, assessed me in 3 seconds flat. I saw him catalog everything: my off-the-rack outfit, my natural hair, my brown skin, the nervous way I clasped my hands together. Saw him make a decision about me before I'd said a word. Saw him dismiss me just as quickly. She's not what I expected, he said, still looking at me but speaking to Elena like I wasn't there. The dismissal stung, but I'd heard it before. Not what they expected. Not what they wanted. Too black, too young, too foreign, too educated. Not educated enough. Too something. But Luca's screaming drowned out my pride. I'd seen this before. Panic attacks in children. They looked different than adult anxiety. More physical, less rational, utterly consuming. The boy needed grounding, not reason. Needed safety, not commands. I moved past Dante Marchesi, the man whose orders probably sent people to the hospital or worse, and crouched at a distance from Luca. Not crowding him, not touching, just present. Then I started speaking, softly, in Arabic. Ya Habibi, inta amin, la ahad sayudhiak. Little one, you're safe. No one will hurt you. Luca's screaming faltered, just for a second. His eyes, the same dark eyes as his father, found mine. I kept going, voice low and rhythmic like a lullaby. Tanafas Mari, Shuf, Kharaj, Dakhil, Kharaj, Dakhil. Breathe with me. Look. Out, in. Out, in. I demonstrated, making my breathing visible and exaggerated. Luca's eyes locked onto me, still terrified but now focused on something other than his panic. Ana Amara, Mahua Ismak? I'm Amara. What's your name? Laluka, he whispered in Arabic. His pronunciation was perfect, accent distinctly Syrian, Damascus, if I had to guess. Marhaba Luka, inta shuja jidan. Hello, Luca, you're very brave. Behind me, I felt the air change. Felt Dante Marchesi go absolutely still in a way that was more frightening than movement. The kind of stillness that preceded violence. I ignored him, focused on Luca. Can you breathe with me? 5 breaths. Let's count together. We counted, in Arabic. Wahid, Ithnain, Thalatha, Arba'a, Khamsa. His breathing slowed, matching mine. The color started returning to his face. The rigid terror in his small body began to unwind. Better? I asked gently. He nodded, wiping his face with small hands that still trembled. Good. You were so brave. I stood slowly, giving him space. Your room is beautiful. Do you like cars? He nodded again, some of the fear leaving his eyes. Me too. I bet you have the fastest cars in all of Chicago. A tiny smile. Progress. I turned to face Dante Marchesi, who hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. His expression was unreadable, but something had shifted in those dark eyes. Surprise. Maybe respect. Definitely suspicion. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. 4. 5. Then he spoke, his voice quiet and more dangerous than any shout could be. Where did you learn that? I blinked. Learn what? Arabic? No. He took a step closer, and I realized how tall he was, at least 6'2" to my 5'6". How he moved with predatory grace that set off every alarm in my hindbrain. "Where did you learn to speak to my son like his mother did?" The words landed like a physical blow. His mother. Past tense. I understood now. The Syrian accent. The panic attacks. The way Arabic calmed him when English couldn't reach him. The reason a Mafia boss needed a nanny with irregular hours and absolute discretion. Luca had lost his mother, and she'd spoken to him in Arabic. "I taught in Dubai for 3 years," I said carefully, aware that every word mattered. Aware that this man could make me disappear if I said the wrong thing. Many of my students were Syrian refugees. I learned that sometimes children need to hear their first language when they're scared. It's about safety, not translation. Dante Marchesi studied me like I was a complicated equation he couldn't solve, or a threat he was deciding how to neutralize. "Elena," he said, never breaking eye contact with me. "Leave us." "Sir." "Now." Elena left without another word. The door clicked shut behind her. We stood in Luca's bedroom, the little boy now playing quietly with a toy car, the crisis averted. But the tension in the room had shifted into something else entirely. Something that made my skin prickle with awareness. One of the guards appeared in the doorway. Dante made a subtle gesture, 2 fingers, a specific angle, and the guard nodded, disappearing again. Some kind of signal. I had no idea what it meant, but the casual efficiency of it reminded me exactly who I was dealing with. "My son has been through 4 nannies in 6 months," Dante said, his voice controlled but carrying an edge that suggested violence was never far from the surface. None of them lasted more than 2 weeks. Most quit after 3 days. The panic attacks are unpredictable. The nightmares are constant. He refuses to eat unless the food reminds him of home, a home he barely remembers. He took another step closer, close enough that I could smell expensive cologne and gun oil. "Tell me, Miss Bennett, why should I believe you'll be any different?" I could have given him the professional answer, the one about my teaching experience, my education, my skills with children. Instead, I gave him the truth. Because something told me this man valued honesty more than Polish. Because I know what it's like to lose the only parent who mattered. I know what it's like to wake up in a world that doesn't speak your language anymore, where everything familiar is gone and nobody understands why you can't just move on. I swallowed the grief that never fully went away. And I know that sometimes the only thing that helps is someone who sees you, really sees you, instead of just another problem to solve. His eyes narrowed. "You lost a parent." "My father. 6 months ago. Cancer." The words still hurt to say. So when Luca was panicking, I didn't see a difficult child. I saw a little boy who's terrified and grieving and trying to survive in a world that suddenly makes no sense. And yes, Mr. Marchesi, I can help him. If you'll let me. Silence stretched between us. Outside, I heard the faint sound of the city, sirens, traffic, life continuing. In here, everything felt suspended. Luca hummed softly, pushing his car across the floor. The sound was normal, innocent, completely at odds with the dangerous man standing 3 feet from me. "The position requires live-in arrangements," Dante finally said, his voice flat and businesslike. "Room and board included. Your schedule will be irregular. I travel frequently for business, sometimes on short notice with no warning. When I'm home, I expect Luca to be cared for with complete attention. When I'm gone, you're responsible for everything. His meals, his education, his emotional well-being, his safety. Everything." "I understand. You'll have 1 day off per week, negotiable based on my schedule and security needs. Elena manages the household staff, but you report directly to me regarding Luca. No exceptions. No intermediaries." "Agreed," And Miss Bennett? He stepped even closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Close enough that I could see the faint scar cutting through his left eyebrow. Close enough to see that his eyes weren't just dark. They were calculating, measuring, deciding. Discretion isn't optional. What happens in this home, what you learn about my family, my business, the people who come here, it stays here. Completely confidential. You don't talk to friends, family, police, reporters, nobody. Break that confidence, and there will be consequences. Do I make myself clear? The threat wasn't implicit. It was crystal clear. This man didn't make empty warnings. My hands wanted to shake, but I forced them still. I understand. Do you? He tilted his head slightly, studying me. Because I don't think you fully grasp what you're agreeing to. You're not just taking a nanny position. You're entering my world. A world where people die for talking too much, where loyalty is everything, and where my enemies would hurt you to get to him. He gestured to Luca without looking away from me. Are you prepared for that? I should have said no. Should have walked out. Should have chosen homelessness over whatever this was. But I looked at Luca, playing with his car, humming to himself in Arabic. A little boy who'd lost his mother and needed someone who understood. And I looked at Dante Marchesi, this dangerous man who'd probably killed people with his own hands, who ran a criminal empire, who was looking at me like he was trying to decide if I was brave or stupid. Yes, I said. I'm prepared. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or approval. Good. He pulled out his phone, typed something with quick efficiency. Elena will show you to your quarters. You start tomorrow. 6 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. Tomorrow? I blinked. Don't you want references? Background check? Some kind of trial period? His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. My people have been running your background since you submitted the application. I know about your father's medical bills. I know about your eviction notice. I know you haven't eaten a proper meal in 3 days. He put his phone away, eyes locked on mine. I know you're desperate, Miss Bennett. That's why I'm hiring you. Desperate people work harder, and they're less likely to betray the hand that feeds them. The brutal honesty should have offended me. Instead, it felt almost refreshing after months of polite rejections. But, he continued, voice dropping lower, I also watched you calm my son in under 3 minutes, using a language you had no reason to know he understood. I watched you prioritize his needs over your interview, and I heard you speak about loss like someone who actually understands it, not like someone reading from a script. He paused. That tells me you might actually give a damn about him. And that matters more than any reference. He moved toward the door, dismissing me with the same casual authority he'd used on Elena. Then he paused, hand on the doorframe, and looked back. One more thing, Miss Bennett. In case it wasn't clear, you work for me now. That means I protect what's mine. As long as you're in this house, taking care of my son, nobody touches you. Not my enemies, not the police, not debt collectors, nobody. You're under my protection. Understand? The words should have sounded comforting. Instead, they sounded like a claim, like I'd just become another piece on his chessboard. I understand, I managed. He nodded once and left, closing the door behind him. I stood there, trying to process what had just happened. I'd come here expecting a standard interview. Instead, I'd talked down a Mafia boss's son from a panic attack and apparently landed a job working for one of Chicago's most dangerous men. Luca looked up at me, dark eyes so much like his father's. Halsa Tabina? Will you stay? The Arabic was formal, careful. Someone had taught him properly. I crouched down to his level. Na'am, Sa'abka. Yes, I'll stay. His smile was small but genuine. Good. The other ladies were scared of Baba. Baba. Papa. He meant his father. Why were they scared? I asked gently in Arabic. Lucas shrugged, returning to his cars. Because Baba is scary. He makes bad men go away. But he's nice to me. Usually. The casual way he said it, like his father making bad men go away, was as normal as brushing his teeth. Sent a chill down my spine. What had I just agreed to? Elena reappeared in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral. If you're ready, Miss Bennett, I'll show you to your quarters. I followed her out of Luca's room, down another hallway, past more security cameras and another guard who nodded respectfully at Elena. We took a private elevator up one floor. Apparently the penthouse had 2 levels, to a wing I hadn't seen yet. This is the staff wing, Elena explained as we walked. Your room is at the end. Private bathroom, small sitting area. You're free to use the kitchen downstairs whenever you need, but there's also a kitchenette up here if you prefer privacy. She opened a door to reveal a space that was easily twice the size of my studio apartment. King bed with pristine white linens. Modern furniture. Floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the lake. A bathroom visible through an open door that had a soaking tub and separate shower. This was the servants' quarters. This was where the nanny lived. I wanted to cry from the sheer luxury of it. Mr. Marchese had your belongings collected this afternoon, Elena said, gesturing to several boxes stacked neatly in the corner. Everything from your apartment. Your landlord has been compensated for the lease termination. I spun to face her. He what? Your apartment was not safe or suitable. Mr. Marchese doesn't leave loose ends. She said it matter-of-factly, like having your entire life boxed up and moved without permission was completely normal. You'll find your personal items organized in the closet and bathroom. If anything is missing, let me know. He had no right. Miss Bennett. Elena's voice was firm but not unkind. You work for Dante Marchese now. That means your old life is over. The sooner you accept that, the easier this transition will be. He's not a conventional employer, but he takes care of what's his. And as of today, you're his. The possessiveness in that statement made my stomach clench. I'm his employee. If that's what helps you sleep at night. Elena moved toward the door. Dinner is at 7. Luca eats in the kitchen with you. Mr. Marchese prefers it that way. He says Luca should have normal routines. Tomorrow morning, I'll brief you on protocols, schedules, and security procedures. Get some rest, Miss Bennett. You're going to need it. She left, closing the door behind her. I stood in the middle of this beautiful room that was now apparently mine, surrounded by boxes containing everything I owned in the world, and tried to comprehend the past 2 hours. I'd gone from eviction to employment, from homeless to living in a penthouse, from nobody to working for a mafia boss who'd casually had my entire apartment cleared out like I was a chess piece he'd decided to move. My hands shook as I opened the first box. My clothes, neatly folded. My books. My father's photo in the frame I'd kept by my bed. Someone had packed my life with care, which somehow made it worse. I sat on the edge of the bed, softer than anything I'd slept on in years, and let myself feel it all. The fear, the relief, the absolute terror of what I'd just committed to. Working for Dante Marchese. Living in his home. Caring for his son who'd lost his mother and spoke Arabic to cope with grief. I pulled out my phone to text my friend Sarah, then remembered Elena's warning. Discretion wasn't optional. I was alone in this. Completely alone. Except I wasn't homeless, wasn't hungry, wasn't 3 days from losing everything. I'd traded one kind of cage for another, but at least this cage had windows. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Tomorrow, 6 a.m. Don't disappoint me. DM. I stared at the text. DM. Dante Marchese. The mafia boss who now controlled my life had my phone number. Of course he did. He probably knew everything about me. I typed back. I won't. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally. Good. Welcome to the family, Miss Bennett. I set down my phone and looked out at the Chicago skyline, the city lights beginning to sparkle as evening fell. Welcome to the family, like I'd been adopted into something I couldn't escape. Like I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. I thought about Luca's smile when I'd promised to stay, about the way Dante had looked at me when I'd calmed his son, like I was valuable, useful, worth protecting. I thought about my father, dying in a hospital while I held his hand, telling me to be brave, to survive, to do whatever it took. This was survival. This was doing whatever it took, even if it meant working for a monster, even if it meant entering a world where people died for talking too much, even if it meant belonging to Dante Marchesi in ways I didn't fully understand yet. I unpacked slowly, putting my life into drawers and closets in this beautiful room that was a cage. When I found my father's photo, I set it on the nightstand and whispered, "I'm sorry, Dad, but I'm still here. I'm surviving." Downstairs, I heard movement, voices, the sound of Luca laughing at something. Tomorrow, I would start my new life. Tomorrow, I would learn the protocols and security procedures. Tomorrow, I would become part of the Marchesi household. Tonight, I just sat by the window and watched the city breathe, trying to convince myself I'd made the right choice. Trying to ignore the voice in my head that whispered I'd just sold my soul to the devil, and the even quieter voice that whispered, but at least the devil keeps his promises. I didn't sleep that first night. How could I? Every sound in the unfamiliar penthouse made me jump. Footsteps in the hallway, guards changing shifts I'd learn later. The hum of elevator doors opening and closing, voices speaking in rapid Italian that I couldn't understand. The constant awareness that I was living in the home of a man who'd probably ordered people killed. At 5:30 in the morning, I gave up on sleep entirely. I showered in the massive bathroom, trying not to think about how much this marble and glass probably cost. Put on simple jeans and a sweater from my boxes, professional enough for childcare, casual enough not to look like I was trying too hard. When I emerged from my room at 5:45, Elena was already waiting in the hallway. Punctual. Good. She gestured for me to follow. "We have 15 minutes before Mr. Marchesi expects you in Luca's room. Let me show you the protocols." We walked through the penthouse as she spoke, her voice low and efficient. "First rule, the doors. Every door in this residence has biometric locks or keypad entry. Your fingerprints were programmed last night while you slept. Don't look surprised, Miss Bennett. Security is paramount here. You have access to Luca's room, the kitchen, the common areas, and the staff wing. Nowhere else unless explicitly granted by Mr. Marchesi." She demonstrated on a door leading to what looked like an office. When I pressed my thumb to the reader, it flashed red. Access denied. Second rule, the guards. There are always at least 4 armed men on this floor, rotating in 8-hour shifts. You don't speak to them unless necessary. You don't ask them questions about Mr. Marchesi's business. You don't flirt, befriend, or attempt to manipulate them for information. They report everything to Mr. Marchesi. Everything. We passed 2 guards in the hallway. They nodded respectfully at Elena, studied me with professional assessment, said nothing. Third rule, visitors. If anyone comes to this penthouse who isn't regular staff, you take Luca to his room immediately and lock the door. You don't come out until Mr. Marchesi or I give the all clear. No exceptions, even if you recognize the person. "What kind of visitors are we talking about?" I asked, though I suspected I knew. Elena's expression hardened. "The kind that require Luca to be protected. That's all you need to know." We reached the kitchen, a massive space with professional-grade appliances, marble countertops, and a breakfast nook overlooking the lake. A woman in her 60s was already preparing food, moving with practiced efficiency. This is Maria. She handles most of the cooking, but you're welcome to prepare Luca's meals yourself if he requests specific things. Maria doesn't speak much English, but she understands basic instructions. Maria looked up, smiled warmly, said something in Italian that sounded welcoming. Buongiorno. I tried, remembering basic greetings from a college Italian class I'd barely passed. Her smile widened. She launched into rapid Italian, gesturing enthusiastically. She says you're prettier than the last nanny, Elena translated dryly, and she hopes you last longer than 3 days. The last one cried constantly and refused to eat. I don't cry easily, I said, and I'm not turning down Maria's cooking. Elena almost smiled. Almost. Fourth rule, and this is the most important one, Luca's routine. He wakes at 7. Breakfast must include something familiar. Maria knows his preferences. After breakfast, educational activities until 11. Lunch at noon. Quiet time or nap until 2. Afternoon activities, usually art, music, or physical play. Dinner at 6. Bath at 7:30. Bedtime stories in Arabic at 8. Lights out by 8:30. This routine doesn't change unless Mr. Marchesi explicitly says otherwise. What about when Mr. Marchesi is home? Does he participate in the routine? That depends on his schedule. Sometimes he joins Luca for dinner. Sometimes he's in meetings until late. Your job is to maintain consistency, regardless of Mr. Marchesi's availability. We walked back toward Luca's room. Elena stopped outside the door, turned to face me directly. Miss Bennett, I'm going to be frank with you. The previous nannies failed because they couldn't handle the reality of this household. They were scared of Mr. Marchesi, uncomfortable with the guards, disturbed by the phone calls they overheard, the meetings they glimpsed, the violence implied in every security measure. Her eyes bore into mine. Can you handle it? I thought about the gun oil I'd smelled on Dante yesterday, the casual way he'd had my entire apartment emptied, the threat implicit in his warning about discretion. I grew up on the South Side, I said quietly. My neighborhood had gang violence every weekend. I learned to sleep through gunshots. I learned which blocks to avoid, which colors not to wear, how to make myself invisible when dangerous men walked past. I met her eyes. I'm not naive about violence, Ms. Castellano. I know what Mr. Marchesi is. But Luca didn't choose his father's profession. He's just a scared little boy who lost his mother. That's what I'm focusing on. Elena studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Good answer. Let's see if you still believe it in a week. She opened the door to Luca's room. The little boy was already awake, sitting on his bed with a picture book open on his lap. When he saw me, his face lit up with a smile that made my chest ache. Sabah al-Khair, Amara. Good morning, Amara. Sabah an-Nur, Luca. Good morning, Luca. Did you sleep well? He nodded enthusiastically, then launched into rapid Arabic about a dream he'd had involving race cars and flying. I caught about 70% of it. His vocabulary was more advanced than most 5-year-olds, and responded with appropriate excitement. Elena watched from the doorway, something unreadable in her expression. Then she nodded once and left, closing the door behind her. I was alone with Luca, my first official moments as his nanny. So, I said, switching to English. Your schedule says breakfast first. What do you usually eat? Manish, he said immediately, with za'atar, like Mama used to make. My heart squeezed. Does Maria know how to make it? She tries, but it's not the same. His small shoulders slumped. Nothing is the same without Mama. I sat on the edge of his bed, careful not to crowd him. I know. When my dad died, everything felt wrong for a long time. The food tasted different. The house felt empty. Even happy things made me sad because he wasn't there to share them. Luca's dark eyes, so much like his father's, looked up at me. Does it get better? It gets different, I said honestly. The sad doesn't go away completely, but it gets smaller. And eventually, you can remember the good things without only feeling sad. How long does that take? I don't know yet. I'm still figuring it out. He nodded solemnly, processing this. Then, will you teach me more Arabic? Baba speaks Italian and English, but he doesn't know Mama's words. I'm forgetting them. The request nearly broke me. This little boy, desperately trying to hold on to his mother through language his father couldn't share. I'll teach you, I promised. Every day, if you want. His smile was sunshine. Can we start now? We spent the next hour in his room, going through a picture book in Arabic. I helped him sound out words he'd forgotten, praised him when he remembered phrases, gently corrected his pronunciation. He soaked it up like a plant starved for water. At 7 o'clock, there was a knock on the door. I tensed. Was this the visitor scenario Elena had warned about? But Luca jumped up excitedly. That's Baba. He always knocks 3 times. The door opened before I could respond. Dante Marchesi stood in the doorway, and my breath caught the same way it had yesterday. He'd clearly just finished a workout. Gray athletic pants, black t-shirt that clung to a frame that was all muscle and controlled power. His dark hair was damp with sweat. Tattoos I hadn't fully seen yesterday were now visible. Intricate designs covering both forearms, disappearing under his sleeves. Italian words I couldn't read. Dates. Images that looked like saints and sinners intertwined. But it was his eyes that held me frozen. They found mine immediately, assessed me with that same calculating intensity, then shifted to Luca. His entire demeanor transformed. Buongiorno, Piccolo. His voice softened in a way I wouldn't have thought possible. Come stai? Luca launched into rapid Italian, running to his father. Dante scooped him up effortlessly, and the sight of this dangerous man holding his son with such obvious affection did something strange to my chest. They spoke in Italian for a minute. I caught maybe 1 word in 10 before Dante set Luca down and looked at me again. Miss Bennett, I trust Elena briefed you on the protocols? Yes, sir. His eyebrow lifted slightly. Sir? Mr. Marchesi, I corrected, unsure what he wanted. Dante is fine when we're in private. The formality isn't necessary. He moved further into the room, and I became acutely aware of how small the space felt with him in it. How was his morning? Good. We reviewed Arabic vocabulary. He's very bright. His retention is exceptional. His mother was a linguist, spoke 6 languages fluently. Something painful flickered across Dante's face, there and gone in a heartbeat. She wanted Luca to grow up multilingual. I'm not equipped to continue that part of his education. I can help with Arabic, I offered, and I have basic Spanish if that's useful. It is? He looked down at Luca. What do you think, Piccolo? Do you like Amara? Luca nodded enthusiastically. She knows Mama's words, and she doesn't cry like the other ladies. Dante's mouth quirked. Not quite a smile, but close. High praise. His eyes found mine again. The other nannies found this household overwhelming. I'm not easily overwhelmed. No, he agreed, studying me. I don't think you are. He crouched down to Luca's level. I have meetings most of today. Be good for Amara. Listen to what she tells you. Capisce? Si, Baba. Dante pressed a kiss to Luca's forehead, then stood. As he passed me on his way to the door, he paused. He had nightmares last night. 3 times. I went to him, but he was calling for his mother. His voice was low, meant only for me. If he has them during the day, sometimes he does during naps, the Arabic helps. Just talk to him. It doesn't matter what you say. Just the sound of it calms him. The vulnerability in that admission, this powerful, dangerous man confessing his helplessness and comforting his own son, made me see him differently. I'll take care of him, I said quietly. His eyes held mine for a beat too long. I know you will. That's why you're here. Then he was gone, and I was left standing in Luca's room, trying to process the fact that Dante Marchesi had just trusted me with something precious. The morning routine went smoothly. Breakfast in the kitchen. Maria had indeed made maniche, and while Luca was right that it wasn't exactly like his mother's, he ate it happily, while I sipped coffee and listened to him chatter in a mixture of Arabic, English, and Italian. Educational activities meant reading together, working on basic math with toy cars as counting tools, and practicing writing letters in both English and Arabic. Luca was bright, curious, and surprisingly well-behaved when engaged. At 11, one of the guards, a massive man with a scar across his jaw, appeared in the doorway of the playroom where we'd been building with blocks. Miss Bennett, Mr. Marchesi requests your presence in his office. My stomach dropped. Had I done something wrong already? Now? I asked. Now. I looked at Luca. I'll be right back, okay? Stay here with... I realized I didn't know the guard's name. Marco, the guard supplied. His voice was surprisingly gentle for someone his size. I'll watch the boy. Luca seemed unconcerned, already back to building his tower. I followed Marco through the penthouse, past the common areas, to a section I hadn't been shown. He pressed his thumb to a reader, and a heavy door clicked open. Inside. Close the door behind you. I stepped into what was clearly Dante's private office. The space was masculine and efficient. Dark wood desk, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the lake. But what caught my attention were the details. Multiple computer monitors showing what looked like security feeds, a safe built into the wall, and sitting on a side table, a handgun, casually placed like it was as normal as a stapler. Dante stood by the windows, phone to his ear, speaking rapid Italian. He gestured for me to sit without interrupting his conversation. I sat, trying not to stare at the gun, trying not to think about what those security feeds were monitoring, trying to remember how to breathe normally. He finished his call, set down the phone, and turned to face me. How's the first morning? Good. Luca's engaged and responsive. No issues. And the household? The guards, the protocols? Are you adjusting? It's different than I expected, but manageable. He moved to sit behind his desk, and the shift in position felt deliberate. This was him in his element, the crime boss behind his throne. I need to discuss something with you. Last night, I had my people complete a full background check. He pulled out a tablet, swiped through something. Your father's medical debt totaled $247,000. The collections agencies have been aggressive. You've been dodging calls for months. Heat flooded my face. That's none of your... It is my business. Everything about you is my business now. His voice was firm but not unkind. Those debts have been paid. In full. As of this morning. I stood abruptly. You had no right. I had every right. You work for me, live in my home, care for my son. I don't leave vulnerabilities unaddressed. He set down the tablet. Those debt collectors were a security risk. People under financial pressure make poor decisions. They talk to the wrong people, accept bribes, become desperate. So you paid my debts to eliminate a security risk? Anger made my voice shake. Not because you cared about helping me, but because you were protecting yourself? Both can be true. He stood, came around the desk. I'm a practical man, Miss Bennett. Yes, eliminating your financial desperation serves my interests. It means you're less likely to betray me, less likely to accept money from my enemies, less likely to make mistakes born from stress. He stopped a few feet away. But it also means you can sleep without panic, eat without guilt, focus entirely on Luca instead of worrying about debt collectors. Is that so terrible? You should have asked me first. Would you have accepted? I wanted to say yes, but we both knew I would have refused out of pride, even while drowning. That's what I thought. He returned to his desk, pulled out an envelope. This is your first month's salary, cash, untraceable. I don't pay through banks. Too many questions. There's also a credit card in your name for any expenses related to Luca. Food, clothes, activities, whatever he needs. No limit. I took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was more money than I'd made in 3 months at my temp jobs. This is too much. It's what the position pays. You're on call 24/7, living in my home, caring for the most important person in my life. That's worth premium compensation. His eyes met mine. I take care of what's mine, Amara. Get used to it. The use of my first name felt intimate, dangerous. I'm not yours, I said quietly. I work for you. There's a difference. Something flickered in his expression. Is there? Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his jaw tightened. I need to handle something. Take Luca to the park this afternoon. Marco and Tony will accompany you. Fresh air will be good for him. He was already moving toward the door. And Amara, thank you. For this morning, for making him smile. It's been rare since his mother died. Then he was gone, and I was left holding an envelope full of cash, trying to understand the man who'd just paid off my debts, given me a fortune, and thanked me for making his son smile, all while casually keeping a gun on his desk like it was normal. The afternoon at the park was surreal. Lincoln Park was busy with families enjoying the mild autumn weather. Children on playgrounds, joggers on paths, tourists taking photos. Normal people living normal lives. And then, there was us. Luca, playing on the swings, laughing with pure joy. Me, pushing him, trying to act like a regular nanny. Marco and Tony, standing 15 feet away, scanning the crowd with professional paranoia, hands positioned near concealed weapons I knew they carried. Higher, Amara! Higher! Luca squealed. I pushed harder, watching him soar. His laughter was infectious. Several other parents smiled at us, just a nanny and her charge, enjoying the day. They had no idea those 2 men watching us could kill them without hesitation if they perceived a threat. Miss Bennett. Marco's voice was low, urgent. We need to move. Now. My stomach dropped. What's wrong? Don't ask questions. Take the boy's hand and walk calmly toward the car. I did as instructed, keeping my voice light even as fear clawed up my throat. Luca, time to go, sweetie. But I'm not done playing. I know, but we'll come back tomorrow, I promise. Tony was already moving ahead, clearing a path. Marco positioned himself behind us. I noticed his hand had moved inside his jacket. We walked quickly but not running. Luca sensed the tension, pressed closer to me. Amara, Ana Kaif. Amara, I'm scared. Ana Ma'ak. Inta Amen. I'm with you. You're safe. We reached the black SUV parked illegally on the curb. Tony opened the back door, practically pushed us inside. Marco jumped in front and the car was moving before the doors fully closed. What the hell was that? I demanded once we were safely away. Potential threat. Could have been nothing. Could have been someone from the Castellano family trying to get eyes on the boy. Marco's voice was matter-of-fact. We don't take chances. Luca pressed against my side, trembling. I wrapped my arm around him, switching to Arabic. You're safe. Nothing bad happened. We're going home. He nodded against my shoulder, and I felt his small body gradually relax. This was my life now. Normal activities disrupted by the constant threat of violence, playground visits that required armed guards, a 5-year-old who understood that potential threats were just part of existence. When we returned to the penthouse, Dante was waiting in the foyer. His eyes immediately found Luca, scanning for injury. What happened? Marco briefed him in rapid Italian. Dante's expression grew darker with each word. Then he crouched down to Luca's level. Piccolo, are you okay? Si, Baba. Amara kept me safe. Dante's eyes lifted to mine. Something in his gaze made my pulse stutter. Gratitude mixed with something more complex. Marco, Tony, good work. Double the perimeter sweeps tonight. He stood, scooped up Luca. Come on, let's get you some dinner. He carried his son toward the kitchen but paused, looking back at me. You did well. Staying calm, following protocol. Not many people can do that under pressure. I didn't have much choice. Everyone has a choice. You chose to protect him instead of panicking. That matters. He shifted Luca's weight. Join us for dinner? I'd like to hear about the rest of your day. It wasn't really a request. Dinner was surprisingly normal. We sat in the kitchen. Dante refused to use the formal dining room when it was just family, he explained, eating pasta Maria had prepared. Luca chatted about the park, carefully not mentioning the abrupt departure. Dante asked about the Arabic lessons, listened with genuine interest as I explained the teaching methods. For brief moments, it almost felt like a regular family dinner. Then Dante's phone would buzz, and he'd read a message that made his jaw clench, or a guard would appear in the doorway with a whispered update. Or I'd catch sight of the gun he wore in a shoulder holster under his jacket. Reminders that nothing about this was normal. After dinner, I took Luca for his bath while Dante disappeared into his office for a call. The bedtime routine was smooth. Luca was tired from the park, pliant and sweet. I read him stories in Arabic, watched his eyes grow heavy. Amara, he murmured as I was tucking him in. Naam, Habibi? Will you stay? Not like the other ladies who left? My chest tightened. I'll stay as long as you need me. Promise? I shouldn't have. I had no idea what I was committing to in this world of violence and danger. But looking at his hopeful face, I couldn't say no. I promise. He smiled and closed his eyes. Within minutes, he was asleep. I stood there watching him breathe, this innocent child caught in a world he didn't choose, and felt the weight of my promise settle over me like a mantle. He trusts you already. I spun to find Dante standing in the doorway. How long had he been there? He wants stability, I said quietly, moving toward the door so we wouldn't wake Luca. Someone who won't disappear. Dante stepped back, letting me exit into the hallway. He closed Luca's door gently, then turned to face me. We stood in the dim hallway, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and dark that probably cost more than my old monthly rent. Today was a test, he said. The park, the potential threat. I needed to see how you'd handle it. Anger flashed through me. You staged it? You terrified your own son to test me? No, the threat was real. There was a man matching the description of a Castellano enforcer, but I could have pulled you earlier, before Marco noticed him. I chose to see what you'd do. That's twisted. That's survival. His eyes held mine, unapologetic. I needed to know if you'd panic, freeze, or handle it. You handled it. Protected Luca, followed protocol, kept him calm. That tells me you can be trusted when things get dangerous. When things get dangerous? You mean this afternoon wasn't dangerous enough? That was reconnaissance. Maybe nothing. Dangerous is when they come armed, when they breach security, when they try to take him. His voice dropped lower. It's happened before. 3 months ago, before his mother died. They almost succeeded. The words hung heavy between us. What happened? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. His mother stopped them. Dante's expression shuddered completely. She died protecting him, and I wasn't there. The guilt in those last words was palpable. Where were you? Handling business. making deals that I thought mattered. His laugh was bitter. I was across town negotiating territory with the Russians while my wife was bleeding out in our home, shot by the Castellanos because they wanted to send me a message. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be vigilant. Be smart. Be ready to do whatever it takes to keep him safe if something happens. His hand lifted, and for a moment I thought he might touch my face. Instead, he gripped the wall beside my head, caging me without touching me. Can you do that, Amara? Can you protect him if it comes down to it? This close, I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Could see the barely contained violence that lived just beneath his controlled surface. Yes, I whispered. Even if it means killing someone? The question should have horrified me. Instead, I thought about Luca's smile. His small hand in mine, the way he'd pressed against me when he was scared. Yes, I said again, meaning it. Something shifted in Dante's expression. His gaze dropped to my mouth, then back to my eyes. For one breathless moment, I thought he might kiss me. Instead, he pushed away from the wall, putting distance between us. Get some rest. Tomorrow we have a security briefing. You need to learn the emergency protocols in case of a breach. He was already walking away. Good night, Amara. Good night. I watched him disappear into the shadows of the hallway, then made my way to my room on shaking legs. That night, I dreamed of gunfire and a little boy crying in Arabic. I woke at 3 a.m., drenched in sweat, and couldn't fall back asleep. So I stood by my window, looking out at the city, and wondered what the hell I'd gotten myself into. And why, despite everything, I didn't want to leave. The security briefing happened at 6 a.m. the next morning in a room I hadn't known existed. Marco led me through a section of the penthouse hidden behind what looked like a regular wall panel. It slid open at his fingerprint, revealing a narrow hallway that terminated in a reinforced steel door. Another biometric scan, and we entered what could only be described as a war room. Multiple monitors showed live feeds from every angle of the building: lobby, elevators, stairwells, the penthouse itself. A weapons locker stood against one wall, locked but visible. Maps of Chicago covered another wall, marked with symbols I didn't understand. And sitting at the central table was Dante, along with 3 men I'd never seen before. Miss Bennett, good, you're punctual. Dante gestured to an empty chair. Sit. We have a lot to cover. I sat, acutely aware that I was the only woman in a room full of dangerous men. Dante didn't waste time. Yesterday's incident at the park was a warning. The Castellanos are testing our defenses, looking for weaknesses. They know I have a son, but they don't know much about his daily routine yet. That gives us an advantage, but only if we're smart. He pulled up images on the main monitor, grainy photos of men I didn't recognize. These are known Castellano enforcers. Memorize their faces. If you see any of them anywhere near Luca, you alert Marco immediately. Don't engage, don't confront. Just get Luca to safety and call for backup. What do they want with Luca? I asked, though part of me already knew. Leverage. They kill him. They destroy me. They take him. They control me. Dante's voice was emotionless, but I saw his hands clench. They've wanted me out of the construction business for 5 years. My wife's death was supposed to break me. Instead, it made me more dangerous. One of the other men spoke up, older, silver-haired, with eyes that had seen too much. The girl should know about the panic room. I was getting to that, Vincent. Dante switched the monitor to show what looked like architectural blueprints. There's a reinforced panic room accessible from Luca's bedroom, hidden door behind his bookshelf. You press the 3rd book on the 2nd shelf, the red one, and the wall opens. Inside, there's enough food and water for 72 hours, communications equipment, weapons, and a direct line to my security team. He looked at me directly. If there's a breach, and you'll know because the alarms will sound, You take Luca to that room immediately. You don't check on the guards. You don't try to fight. You just run. Understand? Yes. Say it back to me. Third book, second shelf, red one. Get Luca inside, lock the door. Wait for all clear. Good. He nodded to Marco. Show her the room after this. Run her through the protocols until she can do it in her sleep. The briefing continued for another hour. I learned the difference between various alarm codes, memorized emergency contact numbers, studied maps showing safe routes out of the building, learned how to identify different types of weapons by sound. Apparently, I needed to know if gunfire was coming from inside the building or outside. By the time it ended, my head was spinning. One more thing, Dante said as the other men filed out. Your days off are suspended for the next 2 weeks. I stood up. What? Why? Because the threat level is elevated. Because I need you here, focused on Luca, not distracted by whatever life you're trying to maintain outside these walls. I don't have a life outside these walls anymore. You made sure of that when you emptied my apartment? His jaw tightened. You're being compensated generously. Consider it hazard pay. I don't want more money. I want 1 day a week where I can pretend to be a normal person. There's nothing normal about your life anymore, Amara. He stood, towering over me. You live in the home of a crime boss. You care for a child who's been targeted for assassination. You've been here 3 days and already witnessed a security incident. Normal ended the moment you walked through that door. Then maybe I should walk back out. The words hung between us, dangerous and reckless. Dante's expression went cold. You made a promise. To Luca. Are you the kind of person who breaks promises to children? The manipulation was blatant, but it worked. I thought about Luca's small face last night, making me promise I'd stay. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair, but it's the reality. He moved toward the door. 2 weeks, then we'll reassess. If the situation stabilizes, you can have your days off. Until then, you're on full lockdown with the rest of us. And if I refuse? He turned back, and something in his eyes made my breath catch. Not anger, exactly. Something more complicated. Then you leave, and Luca loses someone else he's starting to trust. And you go back to your eviction notices, and debt collectors, and whatever minimum wage job you can find. He paused. Or you stay, accept that this is your life now, and let me protect you the same way I protect him. Your choice. It wasn't really a choice at all. Fine, I said through clenched teeth. 2 weeks. Good. He opened the door. Marco will show you the panic room. Pay attention. Your life, and Luca's, might depend on it. The panic room was exactly as advertised. Small, windowless, stocked with supplies. Marco made me practice the entry sequence 20 times until I could do it blindfolded. Then he made me practice carrying a weighted dummy, the same size and weight as Luca, to ensure I could move quickly even with a child in my arms. By the time he was satisfied, I was exhausted and frustrated. Why didn't the previous nannies work out? I asked as we walked back through the hidden corridors. Was it really just fear of Dante? Or was there something else? Marco was quiet for a long moment. The first one lasted 6 hours. Saw Mr. Marchese strike a man who disrespected him, ran screaming. The second lasted 3 days. Quit when she realized the guards were armed. The third made it 2 weeks, then tried to sell information about Luca's routine to a tabloid. Mr. Marchese ensured she regretted that decision. What did he do to her? You don't want to know. Marco's expression was grim. The fourth was scared of the boy himself. Couldn't handle the nightmares, the panic attacks. Called him disturbed. Said he needed psychiatric help instead of a nanny. Anger flared in my chest. He's not disturbed. He's traumatized. There's a difference. That's why you're still here. Marco stopped outside Luca's room. Mr. Marchese doesn't trust easily, but he trusts you with his son. Don't make him regret it. Inside Luca's room, I found the boy awake and playing with building blocks. He looked up when I entered, smiled that sunshine smile. Amara, look, I made a castle. I examined his creation, surprisingly sophisticated for a 5-year-old. That's beautiful, Luca. Tell me about it. He launched into an elaborate story in Arabic about a prince who lived in the castle and had a dragon friend. I settled on the floor beside him, listening, adding to the narrative, watching his imagination unfold. This was why I stayed. Not the money, not the luxury. The afternoon passed in comfortable routine, lunch with Luca, quiet time where he actually napped, a miracle according to Elena, then art projects that left us both covered in paint but laughing. At 4 p.m. Dante appeared in the doorway. Luca, go wash the paint off. I need to speak with Amara. Luca scampered off to his bathroom. I stood, wiping my paint-stained hands on a towel, suddenly nervous. Dante closed the door behind him. I owe you an apology, he said without preamble. This morning, in the briefing, I was harsh. That wasn't fair to you. The apology surprised me. You were protecting your son, I understand that. Understanding doesn't mean I shouldn't acknowledge when I'm being an asshole. He moved closer, and I noticed he looked tired. Shadows under his eyes, tension in his shoulders. The truth is, I'm terrified. Every moment he's out of my sight, I'm terrified something will happen, that I'll fail him the way I failed his mother. The vulnerability in his voice made something in my chest ache. You didn't fail her, Dante. You weren't there. But that doesn't mean you failed. Doesn't it? His laugh was bitter. I built this empire, made all these enemies, put a target on my family's back. And when they came for what mattered most, I was too busy playing crime lord to protect them. Is that why you're so obsessive about Luca's security? Guilt? Partially, but also practicality. The Castellanos want my territory, my businesses. They'll use any weakness to get them. Luca is my only weakness. So yes, I'm obsessive. I'll be obsessive until every threat is eliminated. And then what? He grows up in a fortress, surrounded by guards, never having a normal childhood? Dante's jaw clenched. He'll grow up alive. That's what matters. He needs more than survival, Dante. He needs... Don't. His voice was sharp. Don't tell me what my son needs. You've been here 3 days. I've been his father for 5 years. I think I know what he needs. The words stung, but I pushed forward anyway. Do you? Because from what I've seen, you're so busy protecting him from external threats that you're not noticing the internal ones. He's lonely. He's grieving. He's desperate for connection with you, but you're always in meetings or handling business or... Enough. He stepped closer, looming over me. You're here to care for him when I can't. Not to judge my parenting. I'm not judging. I'm observing. There's a difference. We stood there, inches apart, tension crackling between us. His eyes burned with anger and something else, something that made my pulse race. You're infuriating, he said quietly. You're impossible. His hand lifted, and this time he did touch me, fingers brushing my cheek, wiping away a smear of pain I'd missed. The touch was gentle, almost tender, completely at odds with the dangerous man I knew him to be. You had paint, he murmured, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. Right, here. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, could only stand there while this man, this killer, this crime boss, this father, touched me like I was something precious. Dante, I whispered. I know. He pulled his hand back, stepped away. This is a bad idea. What is? This. Whatever this is. He gestured between us. You work for me. You care for my son. Lines are already complicated enough without... Without what? He looked at me, and the heat in his eyes made my knees weak. Without me wanting you the way I do. The confession hung in the air between us. I should go, I managed. Luca will be back any second. Amara. He caught my wrist as I moved toward the door. Not hard, just enough to stop me. I meant what I said this morning. I need you here, not just for Luca. For me too. You make this bearable somehow. Make me remember there's more to life than violence and revenge and… He cut himself off. Just don't leave. Please. The please undid me. This man who commanded an empire, who ordered people's deaths, who struck fear into hardened criminals, he was asking me to stay. Pleading, almost. I won't leave, I said softly. I promised Luca, and I don't break promises. Something in his expression softened. Even when staying is dangerous? Especially then. He released my wrist, but his fingers trailed down to my hand, squeezing gently before letting go completely. Thank you. Luca burst back into the room, face clean, smiling. Baba, did you see my castle? The moment shattered. Dante turned to his son, and I watched his entire demeanor transform, the dangerous crime boss becoming just a father, crouching down to examine block castles with genuine interest. I slipped out quietly, leaving them to their time together. That night, after Luca was asleep, and the penthouse had settled into its nighttime rhythms, I stood by my window looking out at Chicago's lights. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Can't sleep either. D. I smiled despite myself. Typed back. How did you know? Because I'm watching the security feeds and saw your light on. The thought that he was watching me should have been creepy. Instead, it felt protective. That's not creepy at all, I sent. I'm many things. Subtle isn't one of them. I laughed quietly. What are you doing up? Thinking about things I shouldn't be thinking about. My heart raced. Like what? The 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally. Like how you looked with paint on your face. Like how you make my son laugh. Like how you stood up to me this morning instead of backing down. Like how I'm supposed to keep my distance when all I want to do is… He didn't finish the sentence. Is what? I typed, knowing I was playing with fire. Good night, Amara. Sleep well. He'd deflected, changed the subject, pulled back from the edge we'd been approaching. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt disappointed. Good night, Dante, I sent back. Then I climbed into bed and lay awake for another hour, thinking about paint-stained fingers and dark eyes, and the way a dangerous man had said please, like I was the one with all the power. The next week passed in a strange rhythm. Days were routine, caring for Luca, Arabic lessons, carefully monitored outings with armed guards. Nights were punctuated by text messages with Dante, conversations that started professional and drifted into something more personal. He told me about his father, about growing up in this world, about the moment he'd decided to take control of the family business instead of walking away. I told him about Dubai, about my father's death, about the loneliness of being truly alone in the world. We never mentioned the attraction building between us, never acknowledged the way his eyes lingered when he thought I wasn't looking, or how my pulse raced every time he entered a room. On the 8th day, something changed. I woke at 3 a.m. to alarms blaring through the penthouse, red lights flashing, the sound of running footsteps in the hallway. My heart seized. Breach. I threw on clothes and ran to Luca's room. He was sitting up in bed, terrified, hands over his ears. Amara! He was crying, speaking rapid Arabic. What's happening? Where's Baba? We're okay, baby. Come here. I scooped him up, carried him to the bookshelf. 3rd book, 2nd shelf, red one. The wall slid open. Inside the panic room, I locked the door behind us and immediately called Dante's emergency number. Stay in the room, he answered, gunfire audible in the background. Don't come out until I give the all clear. What's happening? Castellanos. They breached the lobby. My men are handling it. More gunfire. Keep him calm. I'll come for you when it's safe. The line went dead. Luca pressed against me, sobbing. Ana Kaif. Ana Kaif. I'm scared. Ana Maak. Ana Maak. I'm with you. I held him tight, rocking slightly. We're safe here. Your Baba will come soon. Minutes felt like hours. The sounds of fighting filtered through the reinforced walls, gunshots, shouting, something that sounded like an explosion. Luca shook in my arms. I sang to him in Arabic, old lullabies I'd learned in Dubai, anything to drown out the violence. Finally, silence. Then Dante's voice through the intercom. Amara, it's me. Open the door. I entered the code with shaking hands. The door slid open. Dante stood there, blood splattered across his shirt, a cut above his eye, gun still in his hand. Behind him, I saw two guards dragging bodies toward the elevator, but his eyes were only on Luca. Come here, Piccolo. Luca launched himself from my arms into his father's. Dante holstered his gun and held his son close, murmuring Italian reassurances. Then his eyes found mine. You did perfectly. Exactly what you were supposed to do. Is everyone okay? My men are fine. The Castellanos. His expression was grim. They won't be trying this again. The implications of that hung heavy. What now? I asked. Now we go, to the safe house. This location is compromised. He shifted Luca's weight. Pack essentials. We leave in 20 minutes. Where are we going? Somewhere they'll never find us. He touched my face and his hand left a smear of blood on my cheek. Not his blood, I realized with a jolt. Trust me? I should have said no. Should have recognized this as my exit, my chance to run from this world of violence. Instead, I looked into his eyes and saw a man trying to protect his son. Trying to protect me. Yes, I said. I trust you. His smile was brief, but genuine. Then let's go home. The real one. The safe house was 2 hours north of Chicago, hidden in dense woods that swallowed the city's noise and danger. A modern cabin, if you could call something with bulletproof windows and biometric locks a cabin, that felt more like a fortress disguised as a retreat. Luca fell asleep in the car, exhausted from fear and adrenaline. Dante carried him inside while I followed with our hastily packed bags, Marco and 2 other guards securing the perimeter. There are 3 bedrooms upstairs, Dante said quietly, nodding toward the staircase. Put Luca in the middle one, you take the one next to him. Where will you be? Downstairs, working. I need to coordinate the cleanup and plan our next move. I wanted to argue. He looked exhausted. The cut above his eye needed proper attention, but I recognized the set of his jaw. He'd work until he collapsed, if that's what it took to keep us safe. I settled Luca into bed, stayed until his breathing evened out, then found the bedroom Dante had indicated. It was simple but comfortable. Nothing like the luxury of the penthouse, everything focused on function over form. I should have slept. Instead, I showered away the night's terror, changed into clean clothes, and went downstairs. Dante sat at a massive desk, surrounded by monitors and papers, phone pressed to his ear as he spoke rapid Italian. When he saw me, he held up one finger. Wait. I waited. He finished his call, set down the phone, and just looked at me. You should be sleeping. So should you. I gestured to the cut above his eye. That needs cleaning. It's fine. It's not fine. Do you have a first aid kit? He sighed but stood, leading me to a bathroom off the main room. The first aid supplies were military grade. This man prepared for everything. Sit, I ordered, pointing to the closed toilet seat. To my surprise, he obeyed. I cleaned the cut carefully, noting how still he sat, how his eyes never left my face. This close, I could see the exhaustion in every line of his expression, the weight he carried. They came for Luca, he said quietly. Not me. They wanted to take him. My hand stilled. But they didn't. Because you got him to safety in under 2 minutes. Because you followed protocol perfectly. His hand caught my wrist gently. Because you protected him when I couldn't be there. That's my job. It's more than that. His thumb traced circles on my wrist. You could have run, could have used the chaos to escape this life, but you stayed. You chose him. Chose us. I made a promise. People break promises all the time. His other hand came up, cupping my face. But not you. You're different, Amara. You're... He didn't finish. Just pulled me down until my forehead rested against his, both of us breathing the same air suspended in a moment that felt stolen from reality. This is a bad idea, I whispered. Terrible idea, he agreed. You're my employer. You're my son's nanny. This crosses every line. Every single one. Neither of us pulled away. Dante, I breathed. He kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and demanding and full of everything we'd been fighting for 2 weeks. His hands tangled in my hair, mine gripped his shoulders, and for a few perfect moments, nothing else existed. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine again. I can't promise you safety, can't promise you normal, can't even promise you tomorrow in this world. His voice was rough. But I can promise that as long as I'm breathing, nothing will hurt you. Not my enemies, not anyone. You're mine now, Amara, if you'll have me. I should have said no. Should have recognized the danger, the impossibility, the absolute insanity of falling for a crime boss. Instead, I kissed him again, softer this time, and whispered against his lips, I'm yours. God help me, but I'm yours. 3 months later, Luca's laughter echoed through the safe house, our home now, as he raced his toy cars across the living room floor. Outside, snow fell in thick flakes, covering the forest in white silence. I stood at the kitchen counter, reviewing his schoolwork, when arms wrapped around me from behind. He's doing well, Dante murmured against my neck. Your teaching methods are working. He's a fast learner, just needed consistency and patience. Like his father? There was amusement in his voice. I turned in his arms, smiling. You're many things, Dante Marchesi. Patient isn't one of them. I waited 3 months to make you mine officially. That's patient. 3 months since the attack. 3 months of living in this protected bubble while Dante systematically dismantled the Castellano organization. 3 months of watching him transform from the cold crime boss into someone who laughed at Luca's jokes and kissed me goodnight like I was precious. The world outside still turned. Dante still handled his business, still made hard decisions. But he was building something different, transitioning the legitimate operations forward, stepping back from the violence when possible. For Luca, for me, for the future we were carefully constructing. Amara, Baba, come see? Luca called out. We joined him on the floor, admiring his elaborate car track. Dante caught my eye over Luca's head, and the look he gave me was full of promise. This wasn't the life I'd planned, wasn't safe or conventional or anything I'd imagined. But it was mine. They were mine. And I'd stopped counting the days until I could leave, because I'd finally found where I belonged. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.